and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I, as always, am G, joined by my always wonderful co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi guys.
And this month we're doing a series spotlight. We are going to be talking about Hell's Paradise, Jigokuraku by Yuji Kaku. This is a
very spooky series spotlight.
Ooh, absolutely. As per our usual shtick, we do a spooky series for spooky season. This is a 13-volume series.
Extra spooky.
Which has been released in English in its entirety by Viz Media. Thank you everyone who sent in your questions. We got a couple this month. If you are a fan of the podcast or if you'd like to hear more, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, not Google Podcasts because they don't exist anymore, YouTube, on my channel, Simply G, and on all of those places you can also send comments, reviews, which we really, really appreciate as well. You can also follow us on Twitter, or the other site, the other name for that site, at you can follow me at G, that's GEE_reads. You can also follow Ray at Whimsical Pix, PIX, all one word. Have you made a blue sky yet, Ray, or is that still contemplation?
I haven't yet. It's gonna be soon, man. The Japanese people are moving. That means there's nothing for me left on that hell site. Every day, I so rarely go on there nowadays, and every day I do, I just feel worse. I'm just, why? I'm just there looking for, like, Iri Day photos of Takarazuka actresses, and then I leave.
Yeah, I go on there hoping for, like, either licensing news or, like, a nice piece of art from one of those incredible artists that's just a string of, like, random letters and numbers. And then everything else is just sad, and everyone's arguing, and I keep seeing, like, people vague posting about some drama that's happened yet again, because it's always the same 3 drama topics, and I go, no.
In amongst all the god-awful ads and Elon Musk's own stupid tweets that everyone has to see.
Yes, and so I just go, why am I still here? I'm a working adult. I could be doing anything with my time. So we've said it before, until we're sort of down with the ship with the hell site, but really we're getting very close to that ship being underwater, so I think there's going to be a move. It's coming. We'll let you know if and when that happens. Otherwise,
I'm just like a huge boomer about making a blue sky is the thing. It's like I'm so lazy.
Yeah, same. I'm like, what if I just never have social media? What if I go back to Facebook, maybe? What if it's full circle?
What if I just live in a cabin in the woods and never talk to anyone?
Isn't that the dream?
What if I move to a strange and mystical island in search of the elixir of life?
Well, Ray, that sounds like you'd be one of the quirky characters in the series that we're going to be talking about today.
Whoa.
I think that's a perfect segue to Hell's Paradise and what this series is all about.
Yep. So this is at least over here, it's a Shonen Jump series. I don't know, was it Jump Plus or what in Japanese?
I believe, from my memory, it was originally published in Jump Plus because that's where I first read it. This was way back before this series. I mean, Jump Plus is also underneath Viz, but like, this wasn't, I didn't think this was a series a lot of people knew about when it was initially being released in English. And then it made the jump to the Viz Media website, and then it made the jump to, obviously, print volumes. And then since then we've had an anime, and it's something people are a lot more familiar with, but I remember when I was reading it, I don't think anyone else knew it existed, because I don't know how many people were on Jump Plus at the time, especially because the Shonen Jump app didn't have it in their catalog, because obviously those are two separate services, and also this is super violent and has a lot of nudity, so it wasn't allowed. It wasn't allowed.
Tons of nudity. Yeah, extremely funny. How many characters just walk around topless. But yeah, so this series is on the Shonen Jump. It's not on the app. It's on the website. That's where I read it. The reason for that, of course, being all of the violence and nudity. But, so you can read all 127 chapters right now with your Shonen Jump subscription. Yay!
Yay!
But I think that understanding this is under the whole, like, Shonen Jump branding in Japan as well. Like I said, I don't remember the specific publishing details of this one in Japan. I think it was a Jump Plus thing. But it could have been in the main magazine. I wouldn't know, so. But I think genre-wise, it is pertinent information that this is under that Shonen Jump umbrella. It really slots into that sort of battle shonen type of vibe, just with a lot more horror elements and, more blood and sex. Than you're gonna find in, your average One Piece chapter.
Absolutely. A lot more, not a lot more titties, because One Piece has plenty of titties, but, like, a lot more female nipple, exposed
Yeah, a lot more,
nipple.
like, areola action going on. But, better drawn boobies, I will say, than in One Piece, but that is frankly not hard.
Yeah, I was about to say, that is incredibly, incredibly easy to achieve.
Yeah, anyway, so this series is not ecchi, believe it or not, despite how we're talking about it. This series, we start off with sort of this premise that there's been an offer from the Shogun. This takes place in the Edo era under the Tokugawa shogunate. And the Shogun has issued a, I guess, sort of offer throughout the nation that, like, death row convicts have a chance if they'll agree to go to this island, this mythical, like, island of paradise, and retrieve for the Shogun the elixir of eternal life. The one who manages to bring it back to the Shogun will receive a pardon, and not get executed. So I think the series starts, like, with all of the death row convicts, like, joined to receive the details of this mission. And we quickly learn that there have been... Basically, anyone who tries to go to this island does not come back, with one exception, one man came back in the boat that he had traveled to the island from, but he was not alive. He had flowers blooming out of every part of his body and this eerie smile on his face. So we don't know what's going on at this island, but there's clearly something fucked up happening. And that's why they're like, well, these guys are gonna die anyway, so we'll just send them to the island.
Yeah, might as well.
Within that first chapter or two, we have like a paring down where they're basically like, well, we can't send all of you to the island. We don't have that many boats. And so they just like all, kill each other until there's 10 of them left. One of them is our main character, Gabimaru the Hollow, who is a shinobi. He's a ninja of the Iwagakure clan, who is known as this, like, legendary killer who is hollow inside. He feels absolutely nothing. He's like more feral animal than man. And we also meet his executioner. So each of these convicts has an executioner who's going to be going to the island with them, so that if they try to escape, the executioner will just immediately cut off their head. And Gabimaru is assigned our other main character, Sagiri, who, in contrast to Gabimaru's feral energy and just not caring about murdering people, Sagiri is very straight-laced. She's like one of the only women within the Asaemon Yamada executioner like clan. And she worked very hard to get where she is. And she really cares about proving her mettle. So yeah, that's kind of where we start off. All of the other convicts we kind of get early glances at, and they are also crazy. And godlike in their superhuman powers.
Yes. Because these aren't just, like, death row criminals. They're, like, the most elite and difficult to execute criminals.
Well, they already, like, killed all the... That's the other thing with Gabimaru, is he's considered immortal, because, like, they've tried to execute him so many times in so many ways.
10 times, and everything hasn't worked. And he's
Nothing
just like,
works.
I wish I was dead. Why can't you guys just kill me already?
Why can't you just kill me?
And we've tried everything. Guy, we've tried literally everything.
Why won't you let yourself die if you want to die so bad? Which Sagiri confronts him about early on, and we get the reveal. I guess Gabimaru kind of realizes it for the first time, too. That, even though as a shinobi of the Iwagakure clan or whatever, he's not supposed to have any will to live or really any understanding of himself as an individual being. He's just sort of, he is his directive, like he is the job kind of thing. Death itself. But he actually does have, like, a survival instinct that has been leading him to, without even realizing it, sort of thwart these execution attempts. Because he actually does have something that he's terrified to lose, and it's at this point that we learn that he has a wife who he loves very, very much, and he wants to go back to her.
Yes.
And that's his motivation throughout the series, is that he wants this pardon. He wants to get the elixir of life to get this pardon so he can go back to his wife and live a quiet life with her. So, that's sort of the hook of the series, all explained, I think. They go to the island, and fucked up shit happens, and it
There's
really
a
doesn't
whole
stop
no.
until the end. It's a fever dream of a series.
It is. It's certainly one that I wouldn't recommend if you're not into like body horror and a lot of like especially
Mm-hmm.
plant based body horror. There's a lot of that in this
A
series.
lot of plants growing where they're really not supposed to be growing.
No. So if that weirds you out, then maybe this isn't the one for you. But
there's a lot of like sexual body horror as well, in that it's playing with sort of the
gender a lot.
the hermaphroditic aspect of plants and combining that with human anatomy. So there's quite a few titty monsters in this. Even some dick monsters. We love some equal opportunity plant monsters. But yeah, but if that's your shit though, if you're into that body horror stuff, yeah.
You can it really honestly, this is up there with some of the greats. You can't get much better than this. And if you enjoy kind of action adventure stuff as well, which obviously being a jump adjacent title is gonna like there's a lot of death in this, there's a lot of violence, and as Ray said, like that sexual aspect to it, but like ultimately this is like it's a shonen. We get a happy ending. Like it takes a lot to get there.
One of the like most wonderful things about the series, and I think you probably agree, is like it's really big found family energy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's all of these death row convicts who've done awful things with their lives. Well, most of them have done awful things with their lives.
Not all of them.
And these like executioners, the horrors of this island force them into an unlikely alliance, and ultimately to put lay their lives out on the line for each other. And we love some good like shonen found family energy. Like
yes.
It's really just all those super fun aspects that you love in shonen just executed so well, which at that point it becomes relevant to mention that Yuji Kaku was the editor for Fujimoto for a little bit, right?
Yes. Yeah. I believe so.
Yeah. So he's coming from a background being an editor. So I think it feels safe to say that he really understands like shonen conventions and what makes shonen popular. I would say Hell's Paradise, despite how I guess intentionally roughly it's drawn sometimes, is like it's a very polished series beginning to end. Yeah. It's very well paced. I would say if the power creep in the Chimera Ant arc of Hunter x Hunter bothered you, this series is also going to bother you. It's just, you never know when someone's dead or not, because they'll just be like, they'll have their fucking head cut off and be like, I'm fine. It's like, okay.
Alrighty.
The magic system here, too, feels quite Hunter x Hunter inspired. Specifically, it's Taoism inspired, but it's the Tao. But the way that it's employed definitely feels like somebody was aware of Nen and thought it was neat. So Um, yeah.
Yeah, in that aspect, I do really see this as like the Jump Plus version of something like Hunter x Hunter that
Hmm.
Shonen Jump has. Like Hunter x Hunter amidst Shonen Jump is like just that little bit more eclectic and pushing the boundaries a lot of the time
Hmm.
compared to everything else in the magazine.
Yeah.
And at the point that Hell's Paradise was being released on Jump Plus, it really was the only kind of battle fantasy action adventure title that that platform
Hmm.
had this kind of, I don't want to say grittiness because there's a lot of shonen. I mean, it's genetically very shonen, right?
Hmm.
But it does have that body horror sexual aspect to it that's just a little bit, again, edgier or grittier compared to what else was going on and what else was being published.
Hmm.
So it, for my memories of, and this is, again, this is like me going back a long time, almost 10 years now, because this is, I think, originally it was released in English in 2017, 2018. So, so probably 6 or 7 years now. Um, so apologies if my memory is not crystal clear. But reading this was like by far one of the standouts of what was available on that platform.
Hmm.
This and Blue Flag.
I couldn't get too serious, more different. um,
know.
I thought that right here would be a good point to go into one of our questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
From Olive the Manga Reader at Olive the Manga. Was there a specific moment when you started reading the manga that your brain went, soul, I'm all in?
Honestly, like from chapter one, I really enjoyed it. It's a really solid first chapter. I think Gabimaru is a very likable and like strong protagonist. Like he's an interesting character that you could have a lot of fun with over the course of this kind of series. I liked the dynamic between him and Sagiri. We also get the hints of him having a wife. So there's that aspect. It's just a really set up well chapter. I enjoyed it from day dot, but then also I would say secondary to that, once they got to the island,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite early on. It's there's this moves at a breakneck pace as well. Like this doesn't have really anything that you could cut out of it to make it
Yeah, very tight.
very very tight. Um, Once you get onto the island, and you, for me, once I saw sort of the scope maybe of the monsters there,
Mm-hmm.
because it is like somewhat mysterious, and oh, nobody comes back alive, and there's flowers and things growing out of their bodies. There's a level of mystery, and um, you know, you're
Mm-hmm.
not quite sure what's going on, and obviously the shogun doesn't know what's going on either. Um, but once you get to the island and you see the types of monsters and the actual threat level, that was like, yeah, okay, cool. This is
Mm-hmm.
perfect for me. This is exactly what I want. And
Yeah.
then further to that, like once the story starts developing and you get to meet more of the side characters, and they do start to form that found family aspect, it's like, okay, well, that's exact brilliant. No notes.
Show
Thank you.
stopping. She is the moment.
Exactly. Uh, so like
Yeah.
it's my particular type of brain rot, I think.
Yeah, no. Like exactly the same. Like I was interested immediately in the potential for the relationship between Gabimaru and Sagiri, because there was clearly going to be this focus on Gabimaru being someone who's already in a committed relationship and thus not interested in romance.
Yes.
Which means that there's potential for this male and female lead to just not go there at all. Which, spoilers, but it does not go there at all.
Yes, which is so refreshing.
Sagiri is not a romantic lead, and that contributes to her being able to have her own spotlight and her own, like, shonen power-up, like, sequences. And she really is treated like a co-protagonist, and it's wonderful. But... and then when they showed the guy who came back with the flowers growing out of him and, like, you know, the creepy smile that's like, it really looks like he's gone to paradise kind of thing, I was like, ooh, spooky. But again, it's like, once you get to the island and you start seeing, especially, like, just the monster design and the aesthetic of the monsters, I really like, they describe early on that this island, the way that they can tell that it's man-made, all of this mayhem, is because everything has this sort of, like, pseudo-religious imagery to it. But it's all jumbled together. There's Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, like, influences. And none of it is really jumbled together in a way that has any rhyme or reason to it. Like, it looks AI generated, right? This world, like, these monsters, they don't make any sense. So they have, like, appendages that don't seem to serve any function, kind of thing, but they all have this sort of vaguely, like, Buddhist, like, Eastern religion kind of look to them. And they are on, like, a truly cosmic scale as well. Like, they tower over people. And, like, once I started seeing, like, that aesthetic that the island was going for, and just, again, like you said, like, the scale of things, I was like, yep, I'm here. I'm here and I'm living. I will graciously receive my slop.
Yeah. It truly was, because, as said, Jump Plus was one of those platforms that I was certainly popular when it was released, or, like, you know, available, but it was sort of the lesser cousin to Shonen Jump. People are familiar with titles in Shonen Jump. It's the one that has all of your favorites from your childhood. Jump Plus was much more a eclectic mix of just stuff you've never heard of from creators you have no idea about. There was maybe one or two titles that people were interested in, but it wasn't like a Naruto. I mean, they do have titles like Naruto and My Hero Academia and stuff on there as well. But especially if you're in the US or Australia or the English-speaking world, you had access to Shonen Jump, so you would just read Naruto or One Piece or whatever it was on Shonen Jump.
Yeah, because, like, they would tend to have, you know, for the $2 a month or whatever, like, the full series, whereas Manga Plus would tend to have gaps in those big series.
Yeah, so Jump Plus would have... And so the few series that did have, like, the entirety of the series were some of their more notable ones, but this one, Hell's Paradise, was, one, still being released. So it was coming out chapter by chapter. But two did have most of the chapters up. I'm pretty sure it had all of the chapters up to date. And it's one of those things that, like, again, I read it because I had caught up with Blue Flag and I'd read like a half a dozen shorter series that had maybe 12 or 15 chapters, because that was the complete series and all the chapters were available. And this popped up and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Because I'm not gonna not try a series with funky kind of, well, the covers are very similar in color scheme and style to something like Chainsaw Man. It's got that highlighter kind of color splodges, so there was that aspect. But I'm like, there's a girl with a sword, I'll try that out. If I don't like it, I don't have to read it because I'm a big girl. And then I read it and I was like, this is amazing, and I caught up in, I'm pretty sure, one day, not even. Because
bringing you back to childhood.
there was not that many chapters out. There was maybe 30, something like that, and it's a quick read. Like, as said, it is tight, it is fast paced, the action's really easy to follow as well, which is not always the case with some of these action series. I was never confused and trying to like figure out what was going on in the page. It wasn't overly busy. It was compelling. Like, great characters, great dynamic, wonderful setup. And I was like, why is no one talking about this? And evidently it's because it wasn't a title that a lot of people had heard of, because it wasn't on a platform that a lot of people were using. And I was so excited when Viz announced the license for it. I remember that day so well. It was one of those titles that I was like, man, this deserves like public, like print volumes from Viz. People would love this shit. And evidently I was correct. As I often am,
This was also one where you were like, Ray, this is your shit. Like, why aren't you reading it?
Pretty much, because I was like, Ray, 1, Blue Flag, get on it. 2, once you've caught up on that, Hell's Paradise, get on it. You need to be reading this.
And to this day, I had not finished Hell's Paradise until I did for this podcast, so...
And how do you feel now that you've
podcast?
Now, how do you feel now that you've completed it? Now you've reached the end.
Yes. It's a good series. It's a good series. Like I said, I got big Hunter x Hunter energy from it. I kind of want to go through, because I feel like a lot of what is, like, yes, we've talked about the monster design. I kind of want to not necessarily spoil what the bigger monsters on the island are like, because I feel like it would be more fun for people to go into and not knowing anything, other than humans and plants and elixir of eternal life, premise stuff. So I think some things in terms of the monster design are best experienced organically. But I do want to go into more detail about the amazing cast of characters in this series, because it's not just Gabimaru and Sagiri. I do think, like, the strength of them as protagonists is really showcased when we get an illustration later on that's one of those, like, character popularity poll, like, illustrations. And it's literally them are number 1 and number 2. And it's, like, not that common to see, like, the 2 main characters as, like, the most popular characters. Especially not to see the female lead that high up.
Yes, yeah. She's normally, like, 3rd, 4th. Yeah, maybe in the top 5 if she's lucky.
Well, and it's like you would expect a character who's sort of like the honeypot, like Yuzuriha in this series case, to be like maybe higher than the female protagonist too. Even in a case where it's like you can tell from the top 10 that like there's a lot of women reading the series.
Yes. Yeah.
Azochobe being number 3, I was like, yeah. I'm sure the Fujos had a field day with those two brothers. Ugh.
Oh, absolutely.
But there is a large cast to the series, as you would expect in this type of like battle shonen type of thing. As we said, there's literally 20 characters in the premise. There's 10 convicts and 10 executioners. Mm-hmm. And those get pared down a little bit too, but not as much as you would think. A lot of these people are major players, and they're pretty much all good for the most part. So I wanted to get into our other question from @WhimsyDearest, who asks, who are your top three favorite characters from Hell's Paradise? And I figured we could start there and then just start moving down the line of convicts and executioners.
So I think we've already said, like, honestly, it's a little bit cliche, but Gabimaru is my favorite. Like, I love him. He's definitely in the top 3. It's not very often that you...
Precious Bean.
Precious Bean. It's not very often that you get, like, a main character who's meant to be this, like, cool guy, assassin, or, well, ninja in this case, who's killed hundreds of people and all of this stuff, and looks like a 15-year-old, and because he is a 15-year-old, and has this
probably
dark
like
past.
Early 20s or something.
No, I don't know. He has this dark past, and then but he's also like the most precious little meow meow in ever. He is an absolute sweetheart, and because it's so easy to just like create this sort of brooding anti-hero type of protagonist who's, you know, handsome and all the girls love, and, you know, he's a bad guy, but he feels bad for what he's done, which is all true, but, like, also be really genuine and sweet, and you actively root for him, especially, like, from my perspective as a female reader, because I think guys appreciate, like, that dark, brooding, sullen kind of character a bit more, whereas women like...
We love a redemption arc, man.
We love a redemption arc, and also I think there's an act or an aspect of, like, wanting to nurture that poor little, this sweet boy who's been in a bad situation. So, like, I don't know what that says about me, but Gabimaru is a good character. We've touched on it before. There is, like, literally at no aspect is he swayed to be interested romantically in Sagiri. He is a dedicated husband. He adores his wife, even if he doesn't, like, even fully realize that at the beginning of the story. Which is also something that I think a lot of women appreciate more than male readers.
In fiction, wife guys can be real.
Exactly. So, you know, there's truly, he is this, I mean, he's even given, like, the nickname Kitty Maru because he's just a sweet little boy. He
really does have, like, feral cat energy.
Yes.
Like, feral cat who, like, got introduced to the daughter of the head of his clan, and just, like, she kind of took him in like you would a feral cat, giving him milk every day until he starts coming back on his own.
Exactly. And I think that's also an aspect of him, like, discovering how to be human, right? Which he never had the opportunity to when he was just this you know, the
Tool
clan,
to be used.
cool ninja guy, which again is like, I think, something that a lot of readers, not just women, but I think a lot of readers appreciate when you do have someone who like recognizes that they have an opportunity to change their life in a positive way. It's cliche to say, but like, the protagonist is genuinely one of the best characters in the series, and it's enjoyable to read about him, and you want to root for him, and you want him to achieve his dream of having a simple life with his sweet wife in the countryside where he doesn't have to kill people, which is not always the case, right? So these characters.
I wanted to mention, I feel like his whole character arc, there's a lot that I like about it that I want to talk about a little bit, but I wanted to mention that it does feel like a sort of modern take on the, like, Kenshin character arc, which, you know, is a poison series to mention these days. But there was a reason it was so popular, right? And a lot of that rested on the main character, Kenshin. And I feel like having a version of that character who, first of all, is less weird about women, and second of all, isn't by a convicted pedophile, is good. It's good.
Absolutely.
I'll take it. Yeah, and somebody who's a better artist too, frankly. I like Gabimaru a lot because we've been talking about this sort of feral animal to human sort of trajectory he's on. It's very much... There's a lot of aspects within this story. I think central to how the villains work as well is this central theme of, like, generational trauma. And abusers using those under their charge, whether it's, you know, people who work for them, have no choice but to work for them, or people who are family members, basically, and more on a larger scale, the government, right? There's a larger sort of political through line to this, where we've got the shogun using these death row convicts as tools to get to the elixir of eternal life, and that this is sort of how the shogunate works, and how the feudal system in this period in Japan's history works. It's just the powerful using people as tools without thinking about them as humans at all. And you see sort of the island as a microcosm of that sort of very self-centered, poor, frankly, leadership leading to a world that is haphazard and harms the people who live on it. But all of this is to say there's this central theme going through everything of, like, abusers essentially leading their charges to feel that they are not human, like dehumanizing people, and those people who have been dehumanized all their lives finding humanity, finding human connection together in the wilderness. And that really is exemplified in Gabimaru, who has the master of his clan. Like, his name isn't even his name. There is always, like, a legendary killer within the Iwagakure who is called Gabimaru the Hollow. And the person who wants to become the new Gabimaru the Hollow has to kill the old one. But there always has to be a Gabimaru, and he's just the newest one. Also, I think, like, the deadliest one in living memory. Um, but yeah, he's literally nothing more than like a tool for killing,
Mm-hmm.
to serve the purposes of uh the master of the Iwagakure clan, who is a really bad dude and also abuses his daughter, who is the person Gabimaru is married to. um, so he does fucked up shit throughout the series. He tries to convince Gabimaru that his wife isn't even real, just a figment of
Mm-hmm.
his own mad imagination. Um, and it's just super manipulative and awful.
Yeah.
But we see sort of Gabimaru like having to learn to recognize like how toxic his upbringing was, and find ways to discover his humanity,
Mm-hmm.
uncover his humanity, later in life now, uh, with all these people who have also been denied their humanity by people, by family, by the government, for so long. And who have denied humanity to others as well, in the fact that most of them are pretty heartless killers,
Mm-hmm.
at least in their past.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Um, so we've talked extensively about Gabimaru. Um, who's your, well, I don't want to say number two because I don't know how you rank characters, but
my number two, is Sagiri. It's
mm-hmm,
her.
mm-hmm.
I love her so much.
Same answer. Same.
um, yeah. So again, like, she's really embodying, I guess, the other thematic
Mm-hmm.
main through line within the series. Again, it's just such a tightly written series, so it's
Oh.
like that's how you end up with main characters who it's like you talk about them and you end up having to talk about the series as a whole, like thematically,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like they
Mm-hmm.
are perfectly crafted for the series that they're in. Um, but Sagiri's representing this sort of central aspect of the what amounts to the magic system within the world, which is Dao.
Yeah.
Um, and sort of this idea of what constitutes being like a full person and like oneness within yourself and within the world around you. And she's representing that concept of like balance, between, I think the biggest thing, there's a lot of ho hum aesthetically within the series of like the balance between the masculine and the feminine element, and the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
balance between, you know, um, uh, the body and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Yin and
big thing
yang,
that
right? The
she's,
two
yeah,
sides.
yeah, um, but like the big thing that Sagiri represents is the balance between strength and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she That's sort of where she finds her power, and like Gabimaru tells her early on, like, I sense great potential in you to be super strong, like even stronger than I am. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because she's got this insecurity, like, inside her where she's like, um I she doesn't really charge into things, right? She's unsure. She's like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an executioner and I must carry out my duty, stone faced, but I care for the well being of the people I'm killing. I don't want them to be in pain. Um, which in essence is like the practice of being an executioner in Edo, theoretically, right? Is like you're gonna be like the person standing behind the person who's being forced to commit seppuku,
Mm-hmm.
which is, seppuku is like you're slicing your belly open so that you'll have a very painful and slow death. Um, but the quote unquote like mercy of the shogunate is supposed to be represented by the person standing behind them with their sword, ready to decapitate them, so that they can have a quick and painless death instead. So it's like, you know, I was ready to die this painful, slow death for my country, but my country was merciful and granted me a quick death instead, kind of thing. Yeah, I forgot where I was going.
Well, Sagiri's balance between that violent aspect of how she's in, well, her job, and also how she's been raised, because she is the daughter of this clan, right? So she has also different expectations on her, but also that what you're saying, that this gentleness or this softness, this vulnerability, this grace that she's showing the people who are being executed by giving them sort of a quote-unquote painless death, by being as good as she is at doing such things.
Yeah, she's very concerned at the beginning of the series, like that's her goal, is like to be able to always chop the head clean off in one strike. Because she doesn't want, because a lot of executions are like, ideally that's how it's gonna be, but that's not how it goes a lot of the time, right? No. It's hard to chop someone's head off with a sword. Yes.
But so there is this level of having empathy for this person who is losing their life, which is not often seen, because there's always this, a lot of people make a presumption or have a judgment on anyone who's in that position, right? Of like, if you're getting executed for something that you've done, because then you deserve just to be treated like an animal rather than like a human. Not that we should be treating animals badly, but you understand what I mean, right? A lot of people see criminals as monsters, right? They don't see them as human. They remove their humanity. And I think with Sagiri being so concerned about giving a clean and painless death to people who have, like, ostensibly done horrible things, she is still upholding their humanity and recognizing them as a person more than a monster, which is also like another comparison here, like what makes the monster versus human aspect, right, of this balance. Because we both have like literal monsters who are trying to kill our characters, and then you have these human characters who are perceived as monsters because they have done terrible things in their lives. So, you know, there's that aspect of duality as well.
Yeah. I was opening up a screenshot I took of sort of part of, I guess, sort of the culmination of her arc. In terms of, like, finding the balance within herself. Where she's, like, you know, end of the series, like, everybody's dead, basically. Like, on their last fucking legs, right? They're gushing blood everywhere. On fire, whatever. And she's just like, to the bitter end, I remain nebulous and ill-defined, for that is who I am. And it's this idea that she's, like, embracing the contradictions within her own perception of the world. That it's, like, that she starts with in very literal terms of, like, I have to become better at killing in order to show mercy for those who I am killing. But it's also, you know, that she still believes that, you know, the Asayamon Yamada have a place in Japan, but she still feels empathy for these death row convicts and thinks that they should be pardoned or should run off. In the case of some of them, they just run off and start new lives as fugitives. And I really liked that sort of culmination to her being embracing the fact that her feelings don't necessarily always make sense, and sometimes they contradict each other, but embracing that that's just part of being human. And yeah, part of what makes us whole, I guess. I'm not explaining it that well, but yeah, I love Sagiri.
Sagiri is wonderful, and I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but as a female main character, she has so much more complexity and, I guess, payoff for her individual story than a lot of female characters in this genre do. She's not tied to a romantic subplot at all. Like, she doesn't have any kind of romance with any of the male characters. Outside of, like, Gabimaru, there's a bunch of guys running around. She's not getting a pitter-patter of heart anywhere. They got other shit to deal with. It's not the time for romance. But she's allowed
she's also, you know, charged with killing them if they misbehave, so...
Yes, yeah, well, exactly. But also, like, she not only has the setup to a story arc, she, as you said, like, has a fulfillment, even if it's not a clear, like, cut and dry, this is the correct answer, and this is what I am, and this is, you know, and her personality doesn't change, she doesn't change so she, like, can fit into the heteronormative expectation of a trad wife at the end of it, you know. there's a lot of...
She's also, like, in a series full of, like, sex and titties. Like,
not
sometimes
sexualized.
Sometimes she has her titties out, but, like, that's something, like, we haven't talked about yet, but, like, the nudity in the series, there's a lot of it, but for the most part, unless the series is, like, explicitly depicting the act of sex itself, if you're just seeing someone with their titties out, it's really matter of fact. It's just like, yep, that person doesn't have a shirt on. So they're probably redressing their wounds or something. Or they're a plant monster. But yeah, she's, like, not really sexualized throughout the series at all. There's really only one female character who is super sexualized outside of some of the monsters. And that's kind of her thing. So
yeah, that's the whole point of it.
Yeah. So she would want to be portrayed in that way, I think. I'm like, that's my thing. It's like, I don't mind if there's a character who's like that and who's, like, there to be, like, sexy and, like, a femme fatale. If there's other women who aren't that.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I know that for yourself, and I know for myself, like, I'm not a prude. I don't, like, seeing boobs isn't, like, the most horrific thing I've ever experienced in my life. I'm not,
I love boobs.
Well, exactly. Like, there's there's this element of, like, I think people sometimes, if you criticize fan service or if you criticize nudity, excessive nudity and fan service in anime and manga, it's like, oh, well, you just don't like sex and, you're just being a snowflake. It's like, no, I don't have an issue with a character being sexy and also being, like, having a comfortable sexuality and, like, showing off their body, showing off their boobs, showing off their everything if they want to. Like, that's not, I don't care. I'm a girl, I got boobs, I see them every day. I'm not horrified by the idea of boobs. It's when it's leering and juvenile and uncomfortable and at the sake of the character rather than the character expressing something, right? There's plenty of even fan servicey series like My Dress Up Darling that it's fine. You acknowledge the fan services there, and sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's but, like, it's not at the sake of the actual character and their personality and comfort, which sounds really silly to talk about, like, a fictional character that way, but, like, it doesn't feel like you are imposing or leering at a character. There's a matter-of-factness to all of the nudity in this series, insofar as, like, there's aspects where it is in regards to a sexual act and it's saying something about that, or it's relevant to the plot, and then there's, as Ray said, like, nudity in where characters lose parts of their clothing, they lose these it's sort of like Dandadan, right? There is nudity in that, but it's not, like, for the gratification of the audience, right? It's not, you're not seeing the nudity or aspects of nudity in Dandadan and being like, man, that's sexy. Half of the time it's like, oh, that's just, like, yeah, I think that's just what would happen in that situation. That's also very equal opportunity as well, in a similar way to this, where there's lots of shirtless guys all of the time in
it's just
Hell's
a lot
Paradise.
of people losing clothing all the time because they're losing body parts all the time.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, well, it would be weirder if you lost an arm and then, your shirt wasn't ripped off whilst they're ripping off your limb. It'd be more like, oh, well, that was very thoughtful of them to keep my shirt on whilst they're taking my arm off. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so anyway, who's your third favorite character in the Hell's Paradise? Gee.
This is where it gets a bit harder. I would probably say, out of all of our various criminals and all of our various Asaemons, my favorite would probably be Nurugai. Like, okay. I like you. I like Yuzuriha as well. I like them all. It's hard. It's hard. Like, this is the issue with found family, is that, they're a unit.
My family.
They're my family. It's like asking me to choose my favorite child. How am I supposed to do that? But in saying that, like, Tenza's great. They're all great. There's so many. I find even the characters that I don't think are, like, the best characters, insofar as, like, they're not my favorite because they're terrible, like Chobe. But they're still, like, interesting. I still enjoy reading them. It's not, I don't want them to be removed from the series comparatively to, like, that one kid from My Hero Academia who was just a sex joke the whole time, just a pervert. Like, exactly. Like, there's, within the main cast of our found family characters, they're all very interesting, and they're all very I don't want to say unique, but they're all very different from each other. They're all very individual. It doesn't feel like you're reading this, because again, to your point, this is a very large cast, right? Both our criminals are SMOs, and then also like the villains are another large cast of characters. They all feel very distinctly different and have their own personality and individual motivations and story that are all really well fleshed out and understandable and logical in a lot of sense. That it doesn't feel like you're reading the same three character archetypes 27 times. Which can also happen when you have a large cast, because it's like, okay, well, this is the girl character, this is the boy character who likes good stuff, and this is the boy character who likes bad stuff. And then rinse and repeat 14 times.
This is the girl character, but her boobs are slightly larger.
This is the girl character with very small boobs, and that's her whole personality. And you're like, oh.
Alright, well, why don't you tell us about Nirugai? I do really like her.
So, for those who don't know, Nirugai is one of our criminals. She is a young woman, and by that I mean like actually really young.
She's like 12 or something.
Yeah, she's probably the youngest of the main cast.
Other than well, I guess May is like ancient, but
and Nirugai is notable because out of like the entire criminal group, death row criminal group, she is the least deserving to be there because she's done nothing wrong. She is literally been put in prison because she's like indigenous to an area, and they're like, fuck you.
We actually want that land.
Yeah.
So, and then they
how about
murdered her entire people, and she's the last survivor, so they have to kill her so that there will
nobody knows that they genocided a whole town of the local residents.
Yeah, so she's I forget what her specific clan is called, her specific people.
Sanka, the Sanka Mountain people.
Yeah, so she's Emishi, which is indigenous people to the island of Japan, who, were oftentimes systematically killed by the Japanese government, so. Woo!
Yay! So, yeah, basically her whole family and town was genocided, and then in order to, well, I don't know why, I guess because she was a child, and a young, like, girl child, they're like, well, we don't want to just blatantly kill this child. Just in cold blood murder this child with all of her family whilst we killed everyone else.
Well, I think she got away and they caught her.
Yeah. So they're like, well, we can't just murder this child in front of everybody with no due course. She is obviously some horrible criminal. We'll put her on death row and we'll do it the correct way. And you're like, okay, well, no. So, yeah, she's obviously trying to get this pardon because she's literally done nothing wrong and has never done anything wrong and doesn't deserve to be on death row anyway.
Her, like, executioner has one conversation with her and is like, yeah, actually, I think I'm on your side.
Actually, wow, that is fucked up. What? Holy shit. And I like the relationship she has with her executioner. He's a good guy. I don't know. I find this. Her character is very strong. I think she gives a. Not that, because again, I think Gabimara is like 16. He's not old. I don't think he's in his 20s. I'm pretty sure he's a teenager. So it's not like
I feel he's probably like 19.
Well, regardless, like, young. Okay. Well, I don't think. I'm pretty sure at one point they say he's. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's he is a young man, so it's not like we have a whole bunch of old people running around. But Nurugai is the youngest. I think she gives that. She, along with May, who you kind of mentioned a little bit before, give the kind of the child, I guess, the child character of this found family. I think her relationship with her executioner, which you mentioned, is very, very strong. I think anyone who like talks to her is immediately like, oh yeah, that's fucked up. What the fuck? Yes, of course I will help you, child. And I think, that idea of having this, it's again a cliche in shonen, but like having, I guess, this vengeance, this want to like have this murder of your entire people recognized and paid for by the people who did it, is also like very understandable and interesting, and it's interesting, and that's why it's part of the shonen staple, right? This is a Kurapika, this is a Sasuke, this is a, like, motivation wise, not unfamiliar. She also like she fights good. Like, what else am I supposed to say? It's yeah. Her relationship with Tenza, who's her executioner, is great. Her relationship with Shion is also really, really good. And I think she works as a catalyst to help them move past some of their preconceptions of like, these criminals all deserve to die. So maybe in that way, like, she's not, I mean, she's a strong character, but she's also a strong catalyst for other characters.
Mm-hmm. I also like how you have her sort of, Shion takes on sort of a paternal role to her. Mm-hmm. And I like that they included, sort of just a moment for, like, he tells her, like, once we get back to the mainland, we're going to take a separate boat, and we're going to go and we're going to live in hiding. You and me, from here on out, I'm going to protect you wherever you go. And she's like, I don't need a guardian. I want a partner, if you'll have me. Mm-hmm. I liked that there was an acknowledgement of how paternalistic that was coming across. I don't think necessarily hanging a lampshade on it is gonna forgo the fact that it is there. Mm-hmm. But in general, it's like, it's so rare to see indigenous Japanese characters within manga and anime, Japanese media in general. Mm-hmm. And usually, like in the case of like Golden Kamui, it's handled not awesome. So I feel like definitely Nurugai, it's nice that she's there as an acknowledgement of, past genocides in Japanese history. And the fact that there were people on the island of Japan before the people that we would now call Japanese got there. And I think that she's one of the less fraught portrayals. So,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, so I like Nuda Guy as well, that is to say. um, yeah, I like that she exists. For me, she didn't stand out as much as some of the other characters, but, like, I'm really happy that she exists, kind of thing.
Yeah.
My third favorite is also, like, it's really hard to pick one. I also thought about Yuzuriha. I do really love her and her whole arc and everything. I think I probably will go with, it's kind of funny that you went with Nudagai, because I think I'll go with Shion. He's sort of the mentor figure. He's got, like, a rad as hell design. He's one of the executioners.
Yeah.
He's got, like, this crazy scar across his eyes, and he's blind. I think when we find out the reason that he has those scars, is really interesting how it ties into these themes of, like, generational trauma. And I also like that it kind of points out that he's been blind from birth, so it's not the scars that are the reason that he's blind. There's another reason that he has them. I kind of liked that detail. Because I feel like usually in shonen, when you have a character who is blind either in one eye or in both, it's because of something that happened in battle. But it's just kind of a nice little detail that this is a character who is blind from birth, which is a different type of experience. But yeah, he's just cool. He's like team dad. He makes a lot of really stupid blind puns. And he's really proud of them. So he's not only team dad, he's also team dad joke. And he's, like, sort of the one to sort of come to terms with the idea of the Tao the quickest, because it turns out that he's been using it basically his whole life. And so we get some cool, like, lore dumps and stuff through him. And, I mean, he fight good.
He fight good, he good with sword.
Nuragai, she fight good.
Oh, everyone in this cast
fight good.
Oh, everyone in this cast just fight good. And
they just fight so good.
And there's lots of fights, so it's good that they fight good.
This series is like one whole battle sequence. There's, like, one point where they get to pause and breathe long enough to do some exposition dumping. Yep. And then it's just fight. Which is another Hunter x Hunter-esque vibe, because Hunter x Hunter, once it gets into the thick of an arc, is also fight. So.
Which we're not complaining about. That's good. And when your whole point is to have fights, it's good to have fights. It's good to have good fights.
But I guess I like Shion because, I also like his whole thing with, the mourning the loss of his, apprentice, essentially.
Yeah.
Who passes away early on in the series. You know, he's got this, like, you know, veteran who's got regrets about the people he's wronged in the past kind of vibes. They're seasoned. I like that, he's sort of a lot of these other characters who are convicts or who are, let's say, more caught up in the art of execution.
Yeah.
He's just, like, a good guy. He's, you know, got a very strong sense of justice. He cares a lot about the people under his charge. Um, and he cares a lot for people who he feels have been wronged. Um, and it's very sweet. Uh, I will say, like, if there's a character that I don't care that much about, it's actually would be what's his name, like Shugen, the one with the Sasuke duck butt hair.
Yeah.
And um, it's because like I feel like the role they're trying to have him portray feels like it was already filled by Shion, without the stupid crying gimmick. um, so, which I think to some extent is intentional, because Shugen is coming in as an intruder on this like found family.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I think you are meant to feel quite off-put by him, and then in the end kind of have a change of heart as you realize how sincere he really is. But I think if there's somebody I don't like, it's probably him. So
Yeah, I think all of the, I guess, second wave of Asaemon characters are not really necessary. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just kind of to add a additional hurdle, I guess, in the end game. And it's like, well, I don't think we needed this. Like, this isn't... None of these characters are extremely bad, but it's not... Like, I do think if we were going to cut anything out of the story, it's that last little part of...
Yeah. Well, especially him, because he gets so much time. Like, the other ones, it's like they don't get that much development, so it's like, fine. And you know what? I'm never going to turn down a giant woman. But he just gets so much focus. You can tell the author's really fond of him. And I'm just like, why... He wants to kill everybody that I love. I don't...
Yeah.
like... And he keeps crying.
Yeah, man, come on.
Get it together. But yeah, I feel like that role was already kind of sufficiently filled by Shion. That is to say, he's very much like, I really care about, you know, the people that I have taught and who've been apprenticed to me, the people who are younger within my order. You know, he has a lot of fondness for Sagiri because of everything she's worked through as well. He's just really sweet, and I like that sort of breath of fresh air because we have some real fucking psychos in this cast. Do you want to talk about some real fucking psychos?
Absolutely. We can't talk about the series without talking about the real fucking psychos. Let's be clear.
Alright. You want to start with Yuzuriha, since we've both mentioned her already.
Yeah, so Yuzuriha is sort of our other main female character, supporting character. She is also a death row criminal. And
she's also a ninja. She's kunoichi.
And she's also a ninja. Yes, indeed. She is the character that we've been alluding to in regards to, like, sexy is sort of her thing. Like, it's okay that she's sexy because she's supposed to be sexy. And
she's very, like, classic femme fatale.
She has a whole bunch of... Yeah, we learn sort of a little bit of... Well, all of these characters, we learn about her backstory of her being a kunoichi, so, you know, being a ninja, and what put her into this position. Her extremely sexy body is covered in scars, to which most people wouldn't be aware of because she uses ninja magic to hide them, basically. And as said, she is the character that gets the most kind of sexy sexy screen time.
Yeah. A lot of time,
Mm.
she very much is, for her, like, that promiscuity is very much a deflection tool.
Mm-hmm.
There's one point where it's like, there's a character dropping, like, a whole bunch of exposition, and she's just, like, trying on different, like, Chinese dresses in the background. Which is also funny from just, like, a fourth wall breaking perspective of, like, you know, I know this is boring, but we gotta get through it. Here's a pretty lady. But she wants people to think that her entire personality is just being flaky and, you know, using sex as a weapon and, like, being the ruin of men. Because then she doesn't have to be vulnerable with them. She's that type of character. And to some extent, she may not even realize that that is what she's doing. She's like, you know, I've lived this life for so long, like, I don't have any vulnerability to hide. All I have to do is mask my true intentions to, you know, I'll just pretend that I like these people. But, of course, she's still human, which means she develops attachments. Notably, romantic attachments, which is nice. She feels like a character who, like, in another story would be, like, tamed by her love for a man.
Yes.
As the story went on.
Yes.
But she's not softened so much as she just realizes that she cares about people while still being the same person. Yeah, I just thought she was really well written as this type of character. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. She's very, like, everything about her, especially initially, is like self-preservation mode. She's in it for herself. She forms partnerships and then, like, just bounces when things go south because, like, I ain't getting involved with that. Because there's that aspect, and she doesn't like to be upfront and open and vulnerable with anyone. But over the course of the series, as you said, she does open up. She does form attachments, and I think she realizes that, or she recognizes that it's not a weakness to have vulnerabilities and to let other people into your life, or to have other people understand you, which is done very, very well. And as you said, even though she forms all of these close relationships with people, and there's characters who are certainly, like, interested in her, she's not, she doesn't ultimately, like, settle down with one of the boys from the group. She's just off doing her own thing, living life, and, you know, having these new people that she can trust and rely on, but, like, you know, doesn't have to be the little wife at home. And she's been, as you said, tamed by a man. She gives up on her dreams and her aspirations and just goes to live a simple life in the country, which doesn't work the same way, doesn't have the same vibe as comparatively to, like, a male character which is his whole thing, our main character. He wants to just settle down and live a simple, quiet life. If that was Yuzuriha who had that ending or had that wish, doesn't feel the same. There's a lot more baggage with that when you're dealing with a female character.
Well, also, it's just like she's a very free spirit, and I don't necessarily think that that's ever been what Gabimaru's interested in. Like, if she, already had someone, like, back home that she cared about, that she wanted to get back to, that would just be a completely different character.
Exactly.
A different arc. So.
Yes.
But, I'm just imagining, like, the alternate, like, worse version of this series where she ends up with, the big monster slayer sexist guy.
Oh, yeah.
That would totally happen in another shonen series.
It would totally happen, or she would be the guy, what's his name, who died, Senta.
Yeah.
It's like, he was my one true love. I'll just like wander life, never moving on, and you're like, oh my god, I'll go become a monk, and you're like, okay, well,
I'm joining a nunnery.
Exactly.
Yeah, so she's cool. I like Yuzuriha. Series, Sagiri and Yuzuriha have like a really sweet friendship that develops. Series passes the Bechdel test. That's nice. Bare minimum. To round out the female characters, I don't want to talk about Mei too much because again, like her existence kind of spoils a lot about what's going on the island. But she appears initially as a little girl who can't really speak, but she fluctuates between ages pretty frequently. She's very mysterious. She also is a victim of coming from a very abusive sort of order, that is also her family, and having run away from that. I just kind of wanted to point, like, she's got the whole, like, I like how they get a couple of little fan servicey jokes out of her switching ages, but then ultimately, like, she spends the vast majority of the series as, a younger child and isn't really, like, she's not, it shouldn't be a thing, but she's not sexualized at all, right?
Yes,
as a child.
Yeah. as a young child, a young girl, a prepubescent girl.
Yeah. She's just living her life. Yeah. I feel like she could have been such a damsel in distress, but she ends up being a very pivotal part of the story. And actually quite, like, even though she doesn't speak much Japanese, it's pretty clear from early on that she's a very intelligent, ancient being. And she's trying to get that across the best that she can with limited language proficiency, but I don't know, I just kind of feel like it's nice that she feels like a whole character as opposed to, like, a born sexy yesterday little, like, weird cipher.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of reminds me of, what's her name? The girl in, like, as a counterpoint, the born sexy mute. Well, this character wasn't born yesterday, but this mute character who has a lot of power but isn't utilized. The girl from Demon Slayer. What's the sister's name?
Nezuko.
Nezuko. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because Nezuko's, like, quite an important aspect of that story, but the way she gets utilized, and that's a character who like bounces between ages a lot. That's a character who has this element of like can't speak, doesn't speak, and who unfortunately does get sexualized as a small child by the pervert character. And by
Zenitsu is the bane of my existence. I hate him so much.
So, like, although I do like Nezuko as a character, and, you know, Demon Slayer isn't the worst thing ever written. I think there's a lot of good in that series. I do think that as a character, she's underutilized. I do think that she gets forgotten about or pushed to the side a lot. And
she very much, like, exists for, like, Tanjiro's character arc.
Yes, yeah.
In a way that, like, Mei isn't, like, she doesn't exist for, say, like, Gabimaru's development. She's got a different purpose.
Exactly. Which is, you know, it's just interesting to compare the two characters because, like, just Mei we don't meet until kind of midway through the series. Like, she's not one of the original characters. She's not someone who's initially in the mix. But she is very important to the group dynamic and to the story as a whole. Whereas comparatively, like, Nezuko's there from basically the first page, right? Like, from the first chapter, she is fundamental to the plot. She is a motivation for Tanjiro, but, like, early on, you do expect her to be more of a character than she is. And she doesn't do nothing. Like, she does have things where she helps fight and all of these things, but she's not nearly utilized as well as Mei, who's this character who's kind of, I don't want to say an afterthought, but like you wouldn't expect that dynamic for a character who's been in the story from the beginning versus a character who's been in the story from the 1/3 or midway point. It's just interesting because they do have similarities in certain aspects. Maybe superficial similarities, but like,
yeah,
it's just interesting to see how that character trope maybe is utilized differently across different series.
But I think it helps that like Mei is serving like a very important plot purpose in that after they've been on the island for a while, like, just not knowing what the hell is going on, they need someone from the island to tell them about it.
Yes.
So she serves a very, like, practical function. But I'm just glad that, like, her role ended up growing beyond that. And it's just a testament to the writing, I think. Yeah, so that's kind of the ladies. There's not a lot of them. It's shonen. I don't want to hold this series up as like a paragon of feminism. It's a sausage fest. So let's get into some of the boys because they're wild. Starting with the craziest. Let's go.
Yes.
The Aza brothers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Azachobe is like this infamous bandit king, and unbeknownst to the other Asaemon Yamada executioners, his assigned executioner is Azatoma, who is his brother, always supporting him from the shadows. And they're just psyched to be let loose on the island. together to wreak havoc.
Together again.
So, they spend most of the series not together with the main party. Especially Chobe goes off and is captured by the villains and has to fight his way out of all that. And that boy is a force of nature. I don't even know what to say about him. He's crazy. And then Toma is very much like, he feels that he doesn't really exist outside of his brother and supporting his brother. He's almost like his brother's like third arm. Like he's
he lives
lacking
to serve
in the
his
personal
brother.
identity department.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when they get separated from each other and Toma has to be with the main party, who he believes they have killed his brother at that point, he sort of has to figure out who he is as a person, as well as sort of, I guess, growing fond of our found family despite hating them so much. And he has, a dramatic haircutting moment and everything. Chobe, I'm not as interested in as I am Toma. Again, like, Chobe's important because he gets all the intel directly from the villains when he's sort of being tortured by them. And he also assimilates with the plant monsters and becomes even more superhuman, and that's important mechanically for the lore and everything. But, yeah, he's kind of just crazy, mostly. They have, like, a backstory that's really interesting. That's, like, nobility fallen from grace. They've been betrayed so many different times.
Yes.
That it's like, no matter if there's like a black pit where their hearts are supposed to be. But I definitely think Toma is the more interesting of the two brothers, in my opinion.
Yeah. Chobe is just this, like, born crazy, here to fuck shit up. Like, I'm in it for me. Let's make the world burn kind of character, who we've seen a million times before. It is fun to be around, like, fun to read about, but his brother Toma is more of he's more interesting in that he's the cheerleader to that and has to confront who he is when in the absence of that super strong personality of his brother.
Yeah. And I think in the end it's sweet how Chobe sort of, like, supports Toma's essentially, like, self-actualization. In a blaze of glory. But yeah. I like Toma because he's got this whole, like, it's not a redemption arc because it's like, I love the epilogue chapter where we see them after they, like, get back to Japan and then they move to Hong Kong and become, like, kingpins there.
Yeah. Like, yes, perfect. We will just do what we're doing in Japan, but here, it's fine. They don't want to kill us here. You're like, cool, awesome.
But, sort of, like, discovering warmth and, like, making connections with people despite himself outside of his brother, because him and his brother have been alone in the world for so long. Yeah, I like Toma. He's cool. let's see. Who we got left? I feel like the others are really strong, but they don't stand out as much to me. I really enjoy Fuchi. I liked his whole arc. And his little obsession with dissection. It's cute. But I don't know. Are there other characters that you wanted to go more in depth about?
I mean, if we're talking about like the larger group, Fuchi is in there. We also have what's his name?
Tetsai, the
yes,
big guy.
And then the other Tenza is not Tenza. Tenza is the other one.
No Tenza.
Shugen? No, Senta.
Senta, yeah.
Who's in the group for most of it, and he's more of the intellectual. But I mean, if we're gonna talk about, if we're talking about like the criminals, then Gantetsusai is like the other one that we have, because there really is. Well, it's a large cast, but it's pretty split down the middle for executioners and criminals. He's just like a loudmouth. Big, strong, misogynistic loudmouth guy.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of male readers find him very cool.
He's like when we're looking at the found family kind of aspect of it, he's just the boomer uncle that, like, you know, every family has one, and he's not like he's not a good person because he's a criminal who's done a lot of bad shit, but like at the same time, like your weird uncle, he's not actually that harmful to the family group. He's just, you know, he says some outrageous out-of-pocket things, and then you're like, okay, Uncle Jeffrey, absolutely, and then you just ignore it, and then he'll get upset over the war on Christmas or something, and you're like, okay, well, so how's your sports team going? And then he'll just talk to you about that for 5 hours, and then you're fine.
Yeah, he's important. He's not super deep or anything.
No, he's like the tank of the group, right? Like, he's just big and strong, and everyone's good at fighting. But he's like, if you want the muscle, if you want someone to go who's just a big guy, then that he is the guy. He's just the big guy.
He's got a passion for slaying monsters too. So there's a lot of monsters that need slaying on this island. Otherwise, we've got Senta, like you said. I like him for as long as he's in the series. He kind of gets replaced by Fuchi, who I also like. But it's like they're not. I don't really feel like I have a lot to say about them. They fulfill their roles. I think I've talked about everybody that I want to talk about. So,
especially because we are wanting to stay away from larger spoilers around what's going on in the story, because the villain characters are also, there's a lot of interesting characters there. I mean, they're not the most in-depth characters, but it's an interesting dynamic they have, which is also, I mean, I don't want to say it's not found family aspect, but it's a family aspect almost entirely. Yeah. So there's a dynamic there that's kind of counterpoint to the found family main characters that we have. But yeah, to not get into specifics, I think it's important to have an air of mystery or an element of mystery with this series, because it, like, otherwise you're just, it's a solid, interesting action manga with horror elements, but like at the end of the day, it's a series about fight good. A bunch of characters fighting monsters, and they fight good against the monsters. So
I also, like, I think with this series, usually, like, me and G are very much like, if you can't enjoy a series that you've gotten spoilers for, then it's probably not a very good series. But in this case, I have the feeling of, once you kind of get a feel for what's going on, that's kind of it. Like, there's not a ton of layers to the mystery of the island. It's once you figure out what's going on, that's kind of what's going on. And I don't want to ruin that for people, because I feel like the figuring out is a big part of the enjoyment here. So this particular series, I don't necessarily want to talk about the larger villains. Personally.
Well, I think we've talked about characters and story enough. I think the only other, well, I mean, I'm sure there's more we could talk about on those topics, but I do want to bring up the art, because it's something we haven't really mentioned thus far with the series. But I do want to... It is drawn very well. It's drawn very cleanly, insofar as it's very easy to follow, even though there's a lot of weird monster designs and plants and all sorts of things happening. It's not busy, which can often be the case for some of these things. But I do also want to... I mean, we talked about, this is a very, like, chapter to chapter and overall, I think it's a very quick read. Like, it is very digestible.
Yeah.
It's not one that's going to leave you, like, having to, well, unless you're one of those people who has to analyze every aspect of everything to try and find the third hidden meaning in a chapter and what a character says. But
oh, that's me.
But it is one of those things that, like, quite honestly, when I discovered the series, I sat down and was like, okay, I'll read, it has, I don't know, 35 chapters or whatever it was at the time. I'll read the first 5 chapters, or like the first couple chapters, see what it's like. And then before I knew it, I was at chapter 35 and there wasn't any more. And I was like, where's the rest? What? Huh? Are you telling me I have to wait 2 weeks for the next chapter? What the hell? So.
Yep. Definitely, very quick, very snappy, very, well composed chapter to chapter, so that you've got the cliffhangers at the end, so you gotta keep going. Like, one more, just one more. Which, again, former editor, making this series, so he knows all the tricks. Which I think is a good thing. So.
Absolutely. I think also, like, although I say the action is easy to follow, I don't want that to mean that people think it's not dynamic, because there's a lot of, like, characters doing fun moves and jumping around. We got ninjas, we got people with swords, we got all sorts of tricks that these characters are doing, and there's a lot of movement and a lot of like paneling placement is done very well. Yeah,
it's really interesting, like, fight concepts with, like, you know, you've got monsters that, like, you have to find a particular point on them, even though they have very, like, non-human anatomy. You have to find what would be the equivalent to the spot behind the navel, which is, you know, important in Tai Chi and all that. In, like, a giant plant covered in boobs. It's like, well, what the fuck is supposed to be the navel here? Oh my god, there's 2 of them, and we have to hit them at exactly the same time. Yeah, I thought they were very well composed fights. The one criticism I have is that, like, I mean, it is, again, like, the power creep is insane in this series. And I felt a little bit, as I was reading the series over the last week or so, a little bit exhausted with just thinking that characters had died and then they're not dead. That trick was always in the series' back pocket, and it's just like, can we just, like, not do that again, please?
Yeah.
He got his head cut off, but he's fine.
He's fine.
What?
Walk it off.
Which, like, I get it. They're looking for the elixir of eternal life. Like, there's a lot of immortality hijinks going on this island. But also, do we have to do that every time? There were parts where you'd have, like, a whole, like, mourning sequence for a character, and then leave them for 10 chapters, and then they're back, and it's like, where the fuck did you come from? And they'll show up just, like, gushing blood from every orifice, and it's like, honestly, just stay down at this point. Just stay down. That got a little tiring. That's, like, very similar, again, to, like, Hunter x Hunter, where it's, like, especially when they had the second sticking up in, like, the Chimera Ant arc, and you're like, oh my god, I get it. Only 3 seconds have passed in the last 50 chapters.
Yeah.
Shut up. Kind of a minor critique, though. I found the series very well-paced and enjoyable overall.
Well, that's the thing, like, if you can talk about, like, shonen bullshit tropes of, like, we killed him, but he's not really dead, as, like, the most major criticism, you've probably got a pretty good series on your hands.
It's just that this series also does that with the heroes. Like, the villains, I get. They're supposed to be immortal. They've got the elixir of eternal life. But this bozo over here, what's his excuse?
Well, you know, they're just very good at what they do, right? Obviously.
They fight so good, they can't die.
These are our heroes, right? We don't want them to die. That's why it's, you know... It's meant to be triumphant. I'm not saying it is triumphant, but it's meant to be triumphant.
Arms straight through their, like, right where their heart is. Straight through to their back. You're like, I'm fine! Keep going!
I mean, as said, ultimately this is a shonen series. This is, you know... regardless of how you feel about shonen series, you're gonna get a happy ending. Like, I don't know that there's two... Mm-hmm.
There is one other criticism that I did want to make.
Yes.
Just knowing that we have plenty of queer folks who listen to our podcast. I wonder why. um, this series is very okay. There's a lot of focus on like the feminine and masculine element as like a duality, which is not, we know in 2024 that's not how gender works. It's definitely an aspect in some of these religions that are forming the basis for the lore here. But I definitely understand if somebody's reading this series and just finds it kind of exhausting how much that is an element, especially of the villains, who, again, there's a lot of playing around with the hermaphroditic nature of flowers and plants. Yeah, it's, not a very, I know what trans people are type of series.
Yeah. I think...
I'll also say that characters who express queer identities in the series are not the best. Like, that ninja guy, fucking hated him so much. So I guess if there is a character I dislike, it's him, because I do dislike him, and I hated every single second that he was on the page. And I do think that that's an important thing to bring up. I don't think it's, like... I think it's fairly par for the course, unfortunately, in Shonen Jump. But it's also, like, there's better trans representation in One Piece these days. Like, there's not really an excuse. And there's certainly better, like, gay representation to be found, even though it is few and far between. So, I did want to mention that, because I think it is a genuine flaw, and it's going to be important to some readers to know that going in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I completely agree. I think it's easy to hand wave some of this stuff insofar as being like, well, that's just part of the religious aspects of, like, the actual belief system or spirituality systems within these religious understandings. But it is, and it's shonen, so there's never any good queer representation, and like, it's easy to hand wave these things, but it is like, this series wasn't written 30 years ago. It was written not that long ago, and it's always worth, like, mentioning or discussing, noting these aspects. But if you're, again, on the other hand, if you're aware of that, if you're conscientious of that aspect, and with the understanding of, like, yes, this has problems in that respect, I don't think maybe level your expectations. And I don't know how many people are going into the series with, well, I don't know. That's also not correct. But it's like, there's a certain level of, like, this has flaws because of these reasons, this has flaws because of these other reasons, but together, like, none of them are... They're notable, but they're not, like, don't read this because of those aspects, unless it's something that really matters to you, or that really...
Which, like, if that's you, that's totally... valid. And that's why I want to bring it up, because it's like, I know that, like, my partner isn't cis. If I wasn't cis, I think the series would probably make me feel tired at some points. So, and I think that that's super understandable, and I want to make space for that acknowledgement kind of thing. It wasn't a deal breaker for me, but it might be for you, so...
Yeah. Which is why we do mention those sorts of things on the podcast, because not all people are the same, and it is worth highlighting that. And even if we enjoy something and don't have an issue with certain aspects, or have a level of tolerance for certain aspects more than other people, it doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge that those issues exist. So, yeah. But with that, unless there's anything else we want to talk about, I think we can wrap it up.
Yep. Read Hell's Paradise.
Read Hell's Paradise. It is available in its entirety on the Viz website. It is on the website only because, or the Shonen Jump website only because of boobs and murder. You can also read it on Jump Plus as well, or Manga, whatever that ass thing is, Manga Plus, for free, but in its entirety. It is one of those series where, like, you can read every chapter one time for free, and then I think you need to pay for it after that, which a lot of their series has nowadays, which is good. Like, if you just want to read the series one time all the way through for free, but maybe not good if you, like, sometimes you read it over a couple days and then you read maybe a chapter or two ahead of where you stopped so that you get a reminder of what was happening and then continue on. But there are ways to read this.
It's very inaccessible to us old people with memory problems.
Yes, exactly. You can also, I mean, obviously buy this in print. I'm looking at my print copy of Volume 1 right now. If you don't want to buy it for your own personal collection, I'm sure that a library in your area has it. There is also an anime, which is not only available on Crunchyroll for streaming, but has already been released, the first season, on Blu-ray and DVD if you prefer animated versions of fights against boob monsters. I think there's a level of censorship regarding boob monsters in that series. I haven't seen the anime, so I don't know. But if you watched the anime and loved it, definitely read the manga. If you've read the manga and you haven't seen the anime yet, or you're somewhat interested, I think there's, like, for me, I haven't seen it because I have no time, but, like, I do know that a lot of people like to see fights animated, especially, and I think the series lends itself to that. So there is that available. I'm pretty sure there's a second season coming out next year as well. So there's a lot of ways to enjoy Hell's Paradise. It is accessible for everyone in every legal capacity. So, like, do try to support it legally if you can. Jigokuraku, I don't know if he has another series currently, but this is a very strong contender for kind of the era it came out. It's very different from something like Chainsaw Man and Fujimoto's works, but not that far afield either. You can understand the influence there.
He did have the unfortunately very short-lived Ayashimon, what was it called? Which was cancelled before its time.
Yes. I will never not be salty about that series, because I liked that series so much. It was beautiful as well. Lots of creepy monsters in that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with that, we've finished. Read it this spooky season. you know, if you want a creepy series for Halloween that isn't just like about vampires or ghosts or monsters or I don't know, what else?
The apocalypse.
The apocalypse, zombies. Then read Hell's Paradise because it's very good and it will make you feel happy at the end of it.
Yes. Also read, if you're reading on Shonen Jump or maybe Manga Plus, I don't know. There's an epilogue, not an epilogue chapter, but like a side story chapter that is an epilogue. It takes place afterwards. It's about Gabimaru, and some kids and some bandits, and it's really, really cute. And just, all about our bestest baby boy. So.
Our little meow meow, bestest little baby boy. Yeah. So next month we are doing something a little bit different, but something that will not only be kinder to our schedules, but also I think be quite valuable for and timely for our listeners, because we are going to be doing a first volume spotlight of a brand new debut for November, and that is we're going to be talking about Colette Decides to Die, Volume 1.
Yes.
Yay! The crowd goes wild.
This has been on my bingo card for a million years. And I have been just absolutely torturing G with how much she would love this series. I've read the whole thing in Japanese, and it'll be G's first experience with the series, so I'm very excited to talk about our thoughts.
Well, especially because this is, although it's volume 1 in English, it is actually the first 2 volumes of the Japanese release. So
it's an
omnibus, which is always exciting. I always enjoy an omnibus because I think it gives you a better feel for a series than sometimes just a volume 1 will give you. And as said, Ray has been torturing me with this series for years. Just telling me how good it is and how I should read it and how wonderful it would be if I could read it. And so now I can finally read it, which is good. I'm very excited for that.
And all of you can too.
Absolutely.
That's the sort of idea behind these first volume spotlights, is not only that it gives us a bit of a break to have a month where the reading list is just 1 volume long, but also it's to let you guys know about series that might interest you, so that you are able to go out and grab that first volume in a timely manner and really show support for the series. Obviously, I want Colette Decides to Die to do really well, so yeah, I want to do my part in promoting how good this series is.
Plus, like, I think it also allows us to spotlight some debuts that we're interested in, that we are excited for, but also, and I mean, we talk about all of the debuts that we've read in December anyway, but I think it also could lend itself to finding things that we're not super excited and happy about, and we all know how fun those episodes are. Because I don't know how that we're ever going to have a situation quite like Orb and Darwin Incident ever again, because I don't know if listeners know this, but our hatred for those series was completely organic separately. Like, I didn't say like I read this and I went to, you know, our DMs and said, "Oh my god, Ray, this is the worst thing I've ever read. You need to read it."
No. We both read those and fucking despised them
independently. It was
and both of our lives are worse for it.
I don't think the universe has been more in sync than the moment that we realized we were talking about the same series to each other that we hated.
Yeah. Because we always have like a little conversation before we start our best debuts of the year. And it's always like a little bit dancing around the ones that we really didn't like. Usually there's not going to be one that like inspires that much anger.
No.
Usually it's just like, oh, I found this boring or frustrating or whatever. And you're like, kind of dancing around it because it's like, maybe it's on their list. Then we, like, these ones, when we found the moment it clicked for us that we were talking about the same series.
It was truly like, I don't know that I believe in soulmates, but like, holy shit. There was some kind of synergy of haterism right there that I don't know will ever be duplicated. That was it was crazy.
Yeah. But with like the first volume previews, I do I agree with you in that if there's something that we really don't gel with, one volume of it to talk about is definitely an easier sell to both of us than I have to reread all of Attack on Titan just for one podcast episode.
Or Bakuman, or, you know.
I'm sure we'll do a Darwin Incident episode when it's got more volumes, but oh man.
I still can't believe that series getting a print release. I legitimately thought it was digital only. Even when
I can't believe it getting nominated for awards.
I also can't believe it's getting an anime in 2025. Like, why?
I'm angry.
How is so many things going well for Darwin Incident? And then someone's like, is that the school shooter manga? I'm like, what the hell? What? There's no... I'm like, what do you mean? And like, yeah, that's a school shooter. I'm like, oh my god.
No! Wait, but was it the monkey man who committed a school shooting? Because I could see that happening.
I don't know. I truly, there was no further explanation, aside from them confirming that yes, it is the school shooter manga, which just, oh my, anyway,
But this first volume spotlight we're talking about is going to be delightful.
Gonna be good. There's not gonna be a single school shooter in it. Or monkey. I've been promised.
I can guarantee that, yes. I wish it had monkeys in it. I wish every series had monkeys in it. But just none that look like Charlie.
Oh my goodness. So, if you do have any questions about Colette Decides to Die, please leave them either in the YouTube comments on YouTube, obviously, on my channel, Simply G, where we do release this podcast every month. Otherwise, you can leave a comment and a review, if you so deem, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. There's... Every month there's less platforms to talk about. We are becoming just one molten pot of nothing. Just every service is being subsumed into like 2 different services. But if you enjoyed, we do really appreciate the reviews. We do really appreciate the ratings. It is awesome, and that's like crazy. Thank you guys so much. Otherwise, you can follow me at said YouTube channel. Ray does also have her YouTube channel, Whimsical Pictures.
Long dead.
cryostasis, constant, or currently, I should say. You can also currently follow us on the big X of Twitter. I am at GW_reads. Ray is at whimsical pix, PIX, all one word. But as alluded to in the beginning, we will probably be making the jump to clearer skies sooner rather than later. But no full confirmation on that. Maybe next month we'll have an update for that. Aside from that, is there anything else we need to talk about? I don't think so.
Nope. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Happy spooky season for all of those who celebrate. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye till then.
Yep. Bye, guys.